You're listening to the Life Coaching Secrets Podcast, episode number 7. Did you know that life coaches are needed now more than ever? I'm Frank Macri, founder of Thriving Coach Academy. I've trained over 1,000 coaches and helped them launch their own successful coaching businesses. If you want to make an incredible income and impact as a coach and have a lot of fun doing it, I'll show you exactly how to get it done. This is Life Coaching Secrets. Hey coaches, how's it going? In this episode, we are going to talk about coaching boredom. I'll be sharing what to do if you have clients who are experiencing boredom in their career, in their relationship, any area of life. I'm going to share with you how to coach a client who's experiencing boredom. Also, I'll share when boredom is appropriate in our lives and when it is not. So I have a lot to cover here. This is going to be a very boring episode on boredom. Just kidding. Now listen, as coaches, it is important to live a full life. People do not want to hire boring life coaches. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to go skydiving on one weekend and bungee jumping the next. We're not talking about living an extreme life, although it's totally cool if you do that as well. What I'm saying is to live a full life. So one question for all coaches to consider as they begin to expand their practice and also really embody what it means to be a coach, a question to ask yourself is, what would make your life fuller right now? What would make your life fuller right now? What could change? Now, bored is defined as feeling weary because one is occupied or lacks interest in an activity. So bored is an emotion, and that is the dictionary's current definition. Feeling weary because one is occupied or lacks interest in an activity. Now, when I look at my life, I am rarely bored in my life. If there's any emotion I probably feel the least, I would say it's boredom. Even being alone in my house for several weeks at a time, I always find new ways to keep life interesting. And one of the reasons for this is because I have the thought, I love my own company. Now, other people are great too, but I genuinely enjoy my own company. But I used to really rely on others to bring fun and joy into my life. Do you ever feel like that too at times? I used to not see myself as a fun person to be around. And I grew up in a family of very fun, outgoing people with big personalities. And I was the reserved one. That was my self-concept that I reinforced for so many years. Until one day I took responsibility for my life and I realized that I can create fun wherever I go. Right now I'm actually thinking about planning a solo trip in the next year. And I know that I'm going to have the most fun because I believe I create fun wherever I go. So when people start describing their life, sometimes people like to say, I'm just going through the motions. Life just feels like it's passing right on by. When we experience times like this, it's a sign that we are losing sight of who we are and what we want. And life can become boring as a result of that. So the most important thing to understand is we are responsible to create fun, joy, and excitement in our lives. So this is about taking the lead in your emotional experience of life and being the creator of joy. Sometimes we just absolve ourselves of that responsibility to create joy and we expect other people to show up and do it for us. Now, one of the quotes that I remember hearing at some point was, there's no such thing as boredom, just boring people. Kind of harsh, but also kind of true. So the good news is that if you are being a bored person right now, if you're being a boring person, that can absolutely change. Now, have you ever met an older person who is just having the most fun and is expressing the most energy in their life? You ever met an older person like that? One person who comes to my mind is my Aunt Joan. She's maybe 5 feet tall. She's about 80 years old. And whenever I try to call her, because she lives across the country from me, whenever I try to give her a ring, it is so difficult to reach her because she's living such a full life. She's always up to something. She's always doing things to keep her life interesting. And she doesn't wait for joy to come to her. She brings joy wherever she goes. People just light up when they see her, when they're around her presence. So I want you to think for a moment about who embodies the idea of fun and joy. Think of someone maybe in your circle, in your family, someone you follow online or you're really intrigued by. Who embodies fun and joy? What are they like? How do they show up in the world? Now, you might see yourself as so different from them if you're experiencing a lot of boredom in your life, but you are equally as capable of experiencing life with the same amount of joy that they do. You are equally as capable of experiencing that. So if there's any quality in someone that you admire, you have the ability to express those qualities. So the opportunity that I think really makes this helpful is to first think about what is something that is very boring for you to do. Think about the most boring thing that you currently do in your life right now. So just put that in the focus of your mind. Something you do that you just find very boring. Maybe it's a chore, or maybe it's just part of your job. Maybe it's a boring thing you do with your family. Now, think about the fun person that you just brought to your awareness a few moments ago. What if the fun person were to show up to that thing, that boring thing you're thinking of? What would they do? How would they show up to it? Think about it. Like what, for example, let's say that your boring thing is cleaning the garage. How would the most fun person clean the garage? They would probably put on music or make it into a dance party. Who knows? Right? So all of this comes from seeing yourself as a fun person who creates fun experiences. When you see yourself as a fun person who creates fun experiences, all of a sudden it just raises your level of awareness and ownership of the things that you do in your life. Now, I've been hearing this boredom concern come up a lot, especially over the past year when the pandemic hit and people started to go into lockdown. And one of the common things that I've heard is, there's a pandemic and I'm bored at home with nothing to do. Now, if you've thought that for a while now, it's not your fault, but I'm going to give you some tips that can help you. And coaches, listen up here, because you will have clients that will need help navigating boredom. Now, the first thing to consider is simply the thought, I'm bored. That sentence, right? That is not a productive thought to have. It doesn't take you anywhere when you just sit around and think, I'm bored. So one way to reframe what you're going through is by having the thought, I am uncovering new ways to enjoy life. So instead of saying, I'm bored, you can start thinking, I am uncovering new ways to enjoy life. And when you think that, you could see how it would create a whole new experience around what you're really going through. And it's true, because when you are experiencing boredom, all it is an opportunity to get to know yourself and your values on a deeper level. So think about the next time that the idea of boredom slips past your mind, you're like, what if I'm just uncovering new ways to enjoy my life right now? Then what would I make this mean? Now, there's different ways that one can really shake up bored energy. And I've identified there's 4 main approaches and values that people can honor if they want to shake up what I'm calling bored energy. And those 4 values are creation, variety, growth, and movement. Honoring any of those 4 will brighten your life instantly. If you focus on creation, variety, growth, and movement, then you will very quickly shift out of a bored state. So I'm going to explain what each of these 4 values would look like and how they would support you or a client in shaking up their bored energy. The first is creation. Creation is the act of producing something, whether it be art, whether it be music, creating food, or just any form of self-expression. Now, one of the common signs of boredom is when people spend a lot of time consuming. They are not creating, they're consuming. They're consuming information, they're consuming other people's ideas, they're consuming other people's interesting lives, other people's creations. They're consuming social media, news, but they're not contributing or creating anything. So it's very easy to slip into a bored state when we are over-consuming. So some questions to ask yourself is, what can I create right now? What would be so fun to create? How can I express myself? A couple of the ways that I've been loving seeing people experience the pandemic is there are so many people who are deciding to buy all of these puzzles, and they are creating these puzzles and having so much fun doing it. And another thing I've seen really often is the new social media app TikTok, which you may or may not have heard about, but there's so many people who are creating all of these little TikTok 1-minute videos where they're having the most fun, being super creative, using their phone while they are stuck inside their house. And it is just mind-blowing to see how creative people can be when they just decide to be creative, when they decide to create something. So creation is one of the values to focus on if you want to shake up bored energy. What can you create? What would be fun for you to create? How could you express yourself? The second value is variety. So variety is about experiencing something new, something different, something spontaneous. Now, this can be a totally new experience, or it could also be the same experience with new eyes. And I'll explain what both of those mean. So a new experience would be doing something that you haven't tried before. So let's say, for example, that you like to go on a walk usually, but your typical route that you walk around in your neighborhood, it's starting to create boredom for you. This would be just picking a new road to go down, or picking a new part of your neighborhood to walk down, discovering a new location in your neighborhood. Now, you could also have variety by doing the same experience just with new eyes. So this is asking yourself, how can I approach the same thing with new eyes? So maybe you go down the same road, you take the same exact route on your walk, but you play new music as you're walking. Or maybe you have a new way to observe all the houses as you're going on your walk. You could experience the same exact thing, the same circumstance, the same situation, but you could always bring new eyes to it, and it changes the whole thing. So here's how that could also look in other parts of life. If you're in a relationship, right, and you're just feeling bored in the relationship, your options are to get a new relationship, which may or may not be the most appropriate thing for you to do, but you can also ask yourself, how can I spice up things in my current relationships? A lot of times couples, even though they have deep love and commitment to each other, they slip into boredom, and the solution is, how can they spice things up in the current relationship? How can they connect with each other on a deeper level? How can they see the same partner with new eyes? Now, I like to also bring this concept into dating as well. So one of the rules I have when I'm single and when I'm dating is no coffee dates. That is one of my rules. And the reason I have this as a rule is because I would get so bored when I would date. I would go to the same coffee shop, I would ask the same questions, and I would have pretty much the same exact experience. So it just became very bored. So one of the rules I have now is that every first date will be brand new. It will be something that I did not do before. Recently, I went on a date to an escape room, and it was our first date. It was so fun. And years ago, I had taken someone on a first date to a Sam Smith concert. We had such a blast. So if you're having boredom in your relationships or dating, how could you spice things up? How could you bring variety to that process? All right, let's talk about the third value, which is growth. So growth is expanding your education on any topic or learning a new skill, expanding your education on any topic or learning a new skill. So what is something you would love to learn about? What's a skill you can develop? Now, just because you are outside of a classroom, you're outside of your schooling, doesn't mean your learning needs to stop. You are a student to life. And it is so important to continually learn and acquire new skills and expand your education to keep life interesting and fun. I think that whenever we learn a new skill, it just adds so much color to our lives. And one of my friends recently told me, she's also a very successful coach. She said, Frank, you will never regret learning a new skill. This came up because I was thinking about learning the piano, and I had been wanting to pick up the piano for so many years. And I realized that I would always come up with some reason to hold off or just wait or just think it wasn't the right time. And I just questioned, is this really a good investment of my time and money? And when my friend said, Frank, you will never regret learning a new skill, it became so clear. I bought the piano, I hired the instructor, and I am having the most fun learning piano. I'm learning a new skill. So what is a new skill that you would like to develop, that you can learn about? What would be something you'd love to learn about? All right, and then the fourth value is movement. So when we move our bodies, physical movement, we move energy around, we get our blood flowing in our bodies, and when we are in motion, it stimulates insights and ideas. I just discovered there is this game called Just Dance on the Apple TV. If you haven't heard of it, you must check it out. They have all of these different songs, and you are to imitate the dancer on the screen. And immediately I noticed my whole energetic state shifted from boredom to fun, right? When I started to just move my body and dance. So being in motion is also an amazing way to just shift out of bored energy. All right. So in summary, creation, variety, growth, movement. If you are experiencing bored energy, you can focus on even just one of those four values and shift yourself out of a bored state. Now let's talk about how to also coach a client who is going through boredom. The first step is to get curious about the client's boredom, because it's likely that there's one of two things happening and you will coach each of these differently. So I'm going to share the two different experiences that could be happening and the very different ways you would coach through each of them. So one thing that might be happening for your client if they have boredom is they are doing actions that are leaving them with a boring life. So this is where they just be going through the motions. They're doing things that are leaving them with a boring life that they don't want. The second experience is they are just doing a boring action. However, it's getting them closer to a result they ultimately want. So they're doing a boring action that is ultimately getting them results that they want. So first I'm going to talk about what if your client they're bored in a way where they're doing things, but they're still left with a boring life. This is where you want to help your client explore what having more meaning in their life would look like. You're going to do some life purpose coaching here. So what do they really want from life? What do they want to experience most? Maybe it's fun, excitement, joy. What would a meaningful life look like? Now, these are some questions that sometimes people never consider. So just you starting to ask these questions will truly open up a lot for your client when they start to consider what would really be exciting for them right now. Another challenging question that I like to ask is, whose life are you secretly jealous of, or do you wish you've had? Whose life are you secretly jealous of, or do you wish you've had their life? Now, envy can have some amazing clues in it, because whatever person your client identifies, that person is just mirroring opportunities for them to live in more alignment, right? When you're in full alignment in your life, you envy no one, no matter what stage of life you're in. There's no comparing, there's no envy, because you love the journey that you're on. Another great approach to take is on uncovering your client's core values. And in Thriving Coach Academy, our coaches learn a deep and powerful tool to help clients pinpoint their core values. One way you can get started with that is just by asking your client, if they were to name their top 5 values, what would those values be? And it's really important for them to be the values of the life they want, not necessarily the life they have. So sometimes people say, I value family, I value comfort, I value stability. Maybe those are all the things that they currently have in their life, but it's not aligned with the life that they want to have. So it's super important to help your clients identify what are the values that they truly want to honor that aligns with the life they want to have? And then how could they start honoring those values today? How could they start to honor and express those values? Another possible way to coach clients who are doing things, they're going through the motions, but they're ultimately experiencing a bored life, is what are their rules around having fun? This is a big one. So do they have guilt about having fun and letting loose? Are they the serious one in their family or their friend group? This might be a self-concept they have. They're just the serious one. Like when I was growing up, I was always seeing myself as the reserved one. So the idea of fun contradicted this self-concept that I needed to always be the reserved, quiet one that would always watch other people have fun and just be the wallflower. Now, your client might also associate fun with recklessness with being childish or irresponsible. So what are they associating with fun? Maybe they have some judgments or rules about having fun or letting loose. So there's an amazing opportunity to just see what rules does your client have around having fun. When they think about having fun, what does it bring up for them? What resistance might they have to the idea of truly letting themselves loose? All right, so let's talk about what if your client, if they say that they're having boredom, maybe their experience is that they are just doing a boring action, but it's ultimately getting them closer to a result they want, or it is giving them a result they want. You will coach very differently if this is the case. So it is crucial to understand the distinction. For example, let's say that you run 15 minutes a day and you think it's really boring to run, but you know that running is getting you into the shape you want to ultimately be in. In that case, it's about being okay doing the boring work and seeing how it fits into the bigger picture. So yes, on one hand, you can ask, how can you make this more enjoyable and fun? And if you can do that, great. But if not, it's still not a problem. So something to consider is, why does it all have to be enjoyable all the time? As a coach, you want to notice if your client has the belief life should always be fun. Or if it's not fun, I'm not doing it. I chuckle because I used to have this belief. If something's not fun, I don't want to do it. And I realized that it was holding me back from doing the boring things that would ultimately give me the life that I now have, the life that I've wanted. So don't think or assume that just because your client has boredom that they shouldn't be experiencing it and that you need to help shift them into happiness, joy, and excitement. Now, fun is one of my top values. It's often number one on my list, but I also had to grind and do some boring work to build up my business. That was part of the process. So if we go back to the exercising example, you might hear people say, yeah, I want to be in better shape, but running is boring. Doing the exercise is boring. So what that the exercise is boring? So what? You get to have the fun when you look at yourself naked and you feel great about your body. That is the ultimate result. You get to feel great in your skin. So it's bringing you towards the result you want anyway. It's just a boring action you take to get there. So can it be boring and you still do it anyway? It's a great question to have your clients consider. Can you allow this to be a boring thing you do and you still do it anyway because you see how it ties into everything else? Now, one of the things that I would joke about with running my business is I would get so bored at the thought of sending emails. I just couldn't stand it. It was so boring for me to open up an email, to make it all formal, and have to send them off to each and every person that I needed to be in touch with. It was never fun for me until I realized the bigger picture, until I realized that when I send emails, I am keeping in touch with people whose lives that I can change. And I realized how when I saw it connecting to the bigger picture, I understood the significance of the boring things that I was doing. So whatever boring action you're doing that you know is bringing the results that you ultimately want to have in your life, how could you identify the significance of that boring thing? What is the significance of it? Now, my view on life is that it will never only be fun. There are always going to be boring things that we do sometimes. So we might as well go down the path that brings us closer to creating the life we ultimately want. There's not fun parts of being an employee working for someone else. And there's also not fun parts of being a CEO, running my own coaching business. But I would much rather choose to be a CEO because of all the freedom I get to enjoy from this life, and also because of the expansiveness of the impact that comes with being the CEO. Now, both paths are going to have boring things to do. This path allows me to live and continue to create the life I ultimately want. So if you want an amazing life, are you willing to do the boring work in order to create that amazing life? That's really important for you and your clients to answer. It's not so boring when you realize the purpose it serves and how everything ties into your vision. One example as well of this is I remember when I really wanted to pursue coaching and get into coach training, I needed to take on a part-time job to afford the coach training. And it was a very boring job, but that boring action tied into the bigger picture. And it served me in the long run because now I have my own coaching business. So in summary, you have one life to live, and you owe it to yourself to make it the most fun, interesting life that you can. Do the boring work when it matters, when it brings you closer to your vision, when it ties into the bigger picture. And remember, you can create fun wherever you go, and you can enjoy your own company. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next episode. Hey, would you like access to powerful coaching tools you can use on yourself and clients right away? For being a listener of the podcast, I'm giving you a VIP guest pass to get a sneak peek into my coach training program. Inside, you'll learn our coaches' secret tool they use to transform their clients' lives. And you'll also get a training on how to launch a coaching business. Just head over to www.thrivingcoachacademy.com/VIP to get started. I'll see you on the inside.